So I guess the topic we're going into here is bouncing back or recovering from a crash. I think anyone who's been doing this for a while has had their experiences. I think we're all very realistic about the possibility of crashing and the realities that come with it. Um, I have been down the road a few times. Um, it's it's everyone handles stuff like this differently. I guess I don't really consider it, or at least the crashes I've had, traumatic events, but let's just call it trauma. Everyone processes and handles that differently. Um, for me, if I know what happened and I know what I did wrong or what bad decision I made or whatever, a crash really doesn't bother me that much. Obviously it hurts and it's expensive. Trust me, I've still got parts on the way from Italy to put the damn monster back together. Um, but when I know what happened, it doesn't really bother me. When I don't know what happened, that's a different story. Years ago when I was 17 or 18, I crashed at turn two at Jennings on my dad's 916. Which is a bike that had been in the garage since I was like 3 years old, and I worshipped that bike. Um, and Borg, who owns the track, was right behind me, and he came over and said, "What the hell happened?" He had no idea, and to this day, I have no idea what I did or what happened. And I am only now I took 12 years off from the track, but I did a couple track days after that. I'm only now starting to get confident in turn two again. Um, So it is something that definitely sticks with you when you don't know what's going on. I'm a firm believer in just get back on the thing and just ride. Don't let it fester. Don't let it bother you. Um, but I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are on kind of bouncing back from a crash.
Turn two is the kink, at Jennings. Is that what you said?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh
Very
wow, that's
fast.
yeah, right. And that is a rough place. Did you go wide? Is that what happened?
I lost the front.
Oh my goodness,
I
I've never.
lost the front. So I slid on the tarmac enough that I burnt through my gloves and I had pretty severe road rash on my thumb. Um, and it was a whole thing. I'd been riding my SV650 the day before, running like 1 minute 32-second laps, and then I had an incident where someone's head went through my radiator. Um, so then I was on my dad's 916 that we weren't planning on riding that weekend, but kind of had as a backup. And I was running like 4 seconds slower a lap on a much more competent bike and just lost the front. I I've always kind of attributed it to tires, but I honestly have no idea what happened. So turn two has been a boogeyman for me, and I'm finally getting that confidence to actually hit that corner with some speed and some lean angle and some throttle.
Yeah, I think. Well, the point is, if you take your bike on the track for any extended period of time, the bike will go down. And so people who like you guys have had a series about like getting into riding, new riders and things like that. That you have to be basically prepared that that bike may come home in pieces at the end of the day. I mean, so everyone's trying their best to avoid that situation, but I mean that's the reality. And racing's taking that a step further because you're pushing harder. Um, so I've taught the race certification class, I don't know, a dozen times now, and basically I tell people like if you're okay with taking your bike and basically pushing it off the roof of your house onto your driveway, and you can live with the consequences both financially and emotionally, then you're okay to go racing. Like if it's going to break you, if you haven't, you can't afford to get your bike fixed, or you're going to be, curled up in a corner saying, "Oh, my beautiful bike." Don't take it on the track. That's, I mean, the track is certainly safer than the street, but these things do happen. It may be completely not a fault of your own. I mean, you could certainly get hit, or a Jennings, you could hit a turtle or something on the track. That it's crazy, but I mean that does happen. I think I've only crashed once on the road, and that's been due to like loose gravel. That was like that was like parking lot speeds, and that was on my 848, um, and that was like that was a pain. That was an expensive repair for such a low speed
Yeah.
accident. But anyway, at the track, I've crashed 4 times. Um, Two of them were kind of like no, they were kind of like I don't know. I would call them minor. I mean, they were like shaking my head. I hit once. I had the tire was just gone and it low sided. Right in front of me, and it was just like it wasn't a big deal. It's just I just wasn't. Another time I hit something at a track at Road Atlanta. Going into 10A. I still don't. I think there was like runoff on the track from like it rained the night before. It was actually on the in lap. I was actually done. I was slowing down, checkered flag lap, and the front locked up and lost it going into 10B. I mean, it was kind of like that was an odd one. I still don't 100% sure of that. I did have a crash in 2015 where I broke my hand. That was really rough. But probably the worst crash, not really physically, but just mentally, was during a race where I was chasing a guy down. I was in second place, and the front just folded on me. And in the middle of the race, I mean, I basically was doing consistent lap times, and it took me that one was worst mentally because I still don't understand. I looked at the data, I looked at the footage. I don't understand why it was a brand new tire at the proper pressure. I still don't understand why the front just folded on me, and it took a while to get through that confidence in that turn again. But well, I guess the one thing that helped with me is I remember hearing, I think it was Roger Hayden said, like, coming back from a crash, been through this turn, a million times safely at pace, pushing it. And the one, don't dwell on the one time that things
Yeah.
didn't go right. And that was helpful. But still, even knowing all that, and riding a million miles on this one track, this happened at Tally. It still took a while to get confidence in the bike again, and honestly, it was probably better part of a year before I was confident, pushing, the bike into that turn again. I mean, sometimes I think like you've had Joe Gianotto on, and it's almost like he talks about being like a sociopath. You almost have to make that decision. Like, yeah, I know I can crash. It's a possibility that I could crash, I should say, but I'm gonna push anyway. Obviously within my known boundaries, and just you know move along. I mean, that's you have to have a short-term memory. I mean, and
Mhm.
the other thing is, like, the best riders in the world crash. uh that's another thing that's, I think, is helpful as well. And we're certainly not the best riders in the world, but even they crash, get up, get on bike B, their B bike, and go out. And yeah, getting back into the rhythm, kind of gaining that confidence again, is it's easier said than done, but you have to do it. Is my take on things.
Yeah, and for me, I've had a couple crashes. The majority on the street, but I've had two on the track. The first was turn 8 at Jennings, switching back left, and I think the front tire just wasn't ready for the pace that I was going, and the front just washed out, low sided, broke a clip on handlebar, rashed up my leathers, but nothing major. That didn't really rattle me at all. And then after that, I crashed one of my buddy's bikes, turn 9 at Jennings. That right hander, I think I
Yeah.
might have just like ran up, switched back to the right, and I think I might have just ran up on the rumble strip with the rear tire on the exit, and I think it spun out. Um, if I had to guess, and that was on a lightweight Ninja 400, so I wasn't too used to the lines and everything. But same thing, that one, it didn't really rattle me either. Two low sides, and I was able to really get back up and get back on it after that. I wasn't hurt or anything, so it really didn't get inside my head too much. But I did want to know why. On the street, though, I've had some pretty serious crashes. Fortunately, no broken bones or anything. But one time, I got T-boned by a car just going down a one way. There's a car next to me, and then he just decides to make a left-hand turn in front of me and just hit the side of the car, bounced over the hood and everything. And at the time, like, I just remember like my midsection, like my pelvis and everything was just aching, and I could have swore that it was broken. But went and got checked out. Everything was fine. That rattled me a pretty good bit because when you're riding, you know that these things can happen, and I was probably maybe 5 years into riding at that point, and I had not been in a crash involving a vehicle. So it's something that you don't think is a reality until it actually happens. So that one got into my head, and I definitely learned to be a lot more of a defensive rider on the street right after that. And I mean, I was able to ride again, but shortly after that crash, once again, I did a lot of things that I don't wouldn't condone nowadays. But back when I was riding on the street, like I
Who
would not
hasn't?
condone it.
Who
Yeah,
hasn't, John? Who hasn't?
but it was like 2 a.m. We were out riding in like some North Florida back roads, middle of the night, no street lights, on a road I didn't know, with some buddies who knew where we were going, but you know how that goes. We were doing our thing, and I hopped out in front and got out a little bit too far, and they couldn't wave me down or slow me down to tell me that a kink in the road was coming. So we had been on a straight section of road for maybe like 10 miles, just straight back road, middle of nowhere, pitch black dark, no street lights or anything. And then I rolled up on this kink. I was probably doing about 80 when I saw it. And then you know how it works with the headlights, and at certain speeds you can't react. Like by the time that like an obstacle is illuminated, if you're going X amount speed, you can't
Yeah.
react in time. And I kind of think that's what happened. But doing 80, headlights illuminate, like it was just road, and then it just turned to grass, just a field of grass into a depression. And it was probably a second that I had the brakes. Like I reacted to lock the brakes up. But when I hit, I was moving so fast that when I went down into the grass, into the depression, I was still on the brakes. So the bike, the front end dug in, the bike cartwheeled, and then I just remember seeing the grass come at my face like this, like through my. I just remember seeing, like, looking at the grass, and then yeah, I wake up, 15 whatever minutes later, really bad, worst concussion I've ever had in my life. My buddies, I was just at, just typical concussion, symptoms. I was just asking him the same questions over and over again, and the bike was just went cartwheeling over me, and I crashed in the best kind of way because the bike didn't hit me or anything. I didn't break any bones, but it could have easily have been a fatal crash if I had just landed just slightly different from the way that I did. Point blank, period. So now that crash did get inside of my head because it puts into perspective, your mortality a little
Yeah.
bit when you cut it that close, and just how random it was. Like I just went from having a great time to, oh crap, right? It's like we're having a great time. Oh
Yeah.
crap, and then concussion, wake up, and it's so yeah. Now that one did rattle me, but coming back from that one, it definitely helped me mature as a rider, and I was able to get back on the bike just because it changed my perspective a little bit. I just had to look at what I was doing. Understanding the reason, like you mentioned, Tristan, is what helped me through there. And the reason was I was being a freaking bonehead at 2 a.m. at night, going way too fast for the conditions. It was dark. I had no idea where I was. So getting back on the bike, it just having that experience, you know, looking back on it and reflecting and maturing, and understanding why that happened, and making better decisions while riding the street from that point definitely helped me overcome that fear of doing it again.
Yeah, I mean, this my crash on the monster was on the street, and I did a whole video about what happened, but it was basically just poor judgment, cold tires, and the front folded. Um, so I know exactly where I went wrong. I know exactly what happened, but I did still, and I rode the bike home and everything. It's not like, it wasn't anything too crazy, but I I do remember vaguely it was so cold and I felt so crappy anyway, but I do vaguely remember that, like, second lap at Jennings. I was like, "Oh yeah, last time I rode a bike, I crashed it." Um, but then 3 laps later, I was within almost half a second of my personal best. So it's I think understanding it does a lot. and my mentality is just kind of get back on the horse and ride it. But what I would recommend for new riders or someone who's going through it for the first time, if your brain or your body is telling you don't try to force it. Like, don't worry about what other people are thinking or saying, or like, it goes back to any traumatic event in your life. Everyone handles that differently, and that's totally fine. Um, I've definitely seen it in the past, and geez, maybe I've maybe participated in the past, like, riding someone because they're not getting back on the bike, or they're trying to make this really probably a mature, smart decision that they're done riding, or they need a break or whatever it may be. Um, now as a more mature rider, and someone who's trying to advocate for safe riding practices and stuff, if you're not ready, don't force it. Just because getting back on the bike works for me, Andy, and John does not mean that that's the best way for you to do it.
Absolutely. And your thing kind of along those lines is especially like toward the end of the day, like on a Sunday, be a perfect day out and you've already put in 13 sessions and from Saturday and Sunday, and there's no one on the track, and but you're tired. And some people like, some people have the mentality like, I paid for these sessions, I'm going to ride every one of them. But when you start making mistakes mentally on the track, that's a red flag. I mean, that's a warning for you to, okay, you should probably pull in. It's not,
Mhm,
so you're gonna miss a few laps. Big deal. It's because small stakes, mental mistakes turn into either small crashes or big mistakes and big crashes. And sometimes you just gotta know when to step away from the table and say, I've had a good day. I've had a lot of fun. I don't need to put every last lap in until I see the checkered flag on the seventh session. The other thing you touched on is like, especially when you're out there riding on the track, it's like no one. How's the saying goes? No one cares how fast you are. No one cares how fast you are not. I mean, it's like we go out riding, and if John's blowing my doors off, I'm not going to push, to 120% to keep up with him. It's like typically, yeah, I like to ride with people. We all do, but you have to understand your limits. And everyone's just working on their own stuff and just get in your own groove. And if someone passes you, great. Maybe you get a free lesson through the next turn and say, oh, how are they going through this turn, what are they doing differently? But to consistently push beyond where you're comfortable, that's a recipe for disaster. I
mhm.
mean, you'll see it anytime you see pros out there. They could be on, I've seen Moto America kids on 400s pass me. I'm like, how's this possible? I have like triple the horsepower on my bike than they do, but their skill set is on a different level than mine. To try to keep up with them on my bike, it's not that's not a wise move. So just check any of the new riders. Really, just check your ego at the door. I mean, the track is a wonderful environment because it does take away a lot of the hazards which are present on the street. You don't typically, outside of that one Roebling event, you don't have cars on the road with you. You don't have police. You don't have people walking or pets or things like that on the track. It's the same loop over and over again for practice. So there's a lot of things which are definitely geared. It is a safer environment, and just put in your work and certainly improve. Don't go crazy. Especially new riders. I mean, it is a track. It's you're pushing things. Just don't go, don't go nuts in terms of pushing things. The other thing I see this a lot also as an instructor, where people can't wait, to put their knee down. I mean, typically, like literally, like over exaggerating shitty body position to try to drag a knee. And again, I remember distinctly talking to someone who was on like a brand new bike. Beautiful. I mean, like literally probably had less than 500 miles on the bike with his body position all out of whack, trying to get his knee down. And, they said, you're focusing on the wrong things. I mean, that's one of these things that just comes naturally, like when, for new riders, they continue, years, pick up the pace, depending on how quickly you develop. then one day that knee's going to go down. You won't even realize it. I mean, I remember one of the first times that happened to me, I thought I was crashing. I literally, I think it was a tally, and the surface is so rough. And when that knee puck goes down, it is just, I mean,
Grinding.
it's grinding like Jennings. It's about the same level of abrasion. And I thought I was crashing, and I was like, well, I guess made it through the turn. It's like, I guess that was my knee going down. It's something that happens naturally, but don't force that. I mean, that's focusing on the wrong things. Just, you know, have fun and work on your skill sets within your limits. Um, well, anyway, that's my motherhood talk for the segment of the discussion.
Yeah, and for for me too, just another tip for any of the newer guys that are working on getting over a crash. After I got in my cartwheel crash and just wadded my bike up like a dummy, I wasn't in a good headspace. Like aside from the concussion, but I wasn't in a good headspace to ride my bike like that following day. And understand that you know we're all riders. We're all people that are just enjoying a sport, and at the same time we're all just a little bit different, right? So whereas Mark Marquez can get up from a crash and then hop back on the bike, run to the pits, and then hop out and throw down like a burning qualifier lap, we all don't have to do that. If you get into a crash, don't feel pressure to get back on to the bike immediately. It depends on you. It depends on your situation, and it depends on your headspace. But if you're the type of person that in 2 days it's behind you and you're good, then that's great. But at the same time, if a week goes by, if 2 weeks go by, and you're still not in the right headspace, you're thinking, that mentality, I got to get back on this horse. I got to get back up here ASAP. Don't have that headspace. I think. I mean, there's no reason to rush getting back on the bike. Take your time. Think about what happened. Fix your bike up. And then when you're comfortable, when you're ready, get back on the bike. I don't think there's any reason to rush that process at all.
Yeah, don't give in to peer pressure. I mean, you
Yeah.
you have to make that decision if you're gonna fire up the bike and head out. I mean, because regardless of what people say, it's like, oh, get out there. Or, I mean, it's like it's a personal decision. You have to, weigh, hey, am I you really do have to be focused. That's why a lot of times, like people try to get a hold of me on the weekends, like if I'm at the track, and it's like I don't check any of that social media while I'm at the track. Sometimes I don't even have
Mhm.
the phone on because I just don't. I'm focusing on my tire pressure's right, do I have gas, et cetera, et cetera. And so like if you crash and then like you get the bike fixed and whatever, get it re-tacked, and it's like you go back, and if you're ready to go back out, and your buddy's saying, "Oh, go back out," it's like you have to make that decision. It's like because you wad it up again, it's going to just make things even worse. And you're the one paying the bills, medically or for the bike repairs and things like that. They aren't. So you make your own decision. Don't give in to peer pressure. You go out when you want to go out, and when you're in that mindset to put some laps back down.
Yeah, it's really just trust yourself. It's I feel like every time I'm at Jennings now, I meet someone new who's telling me a story about their helicopter ride out of that track.
Oh
I mean,
man.
the fact of the matter is this is a dangerous sport. Um, yes, a lot of us do it for a long time with no serious injuries, but the total opposite can happen as well. So if you're not feeling it, do not try to push it and do not worry about what anyone else thinks because ultimately we're all so busy doing so many things. No one's really paying attention to what you're doing. Um, to build off what Andy said, in all my track days, probably the majority of the time, I don't ride the last session. I know I'm tired. I know I've accomplished what I need to do or whatever, or it's. But I've also had track days like the Sunday I did recently, where I just went for the one day, where my best two sessions of the day were the last two sessions.
Yeah.
Um, but the majority of the time I don't go out last session because I'm like, you know what, we've done it, we've accomplished what we need to. The tires are crap, I'm tired, my brain's crap at this point. and it's just not worth it with how much mental, financial, everything risk there is to going out. And just quick side note on the dragging knee thing, when I was a teenager and more flexible, I was running 1 minute 32s and dragging my knee everywhere at Jennings. Now I'm running consistent 131s and every now and again dropping into the 130s. And I think since I've come back to the track, I grazed my knee like 6 times maybe. So I'm running faster than I was before,
Yeah.
more consistently, and I'm not touching my knee at all. So that's really, like you say, that is not the focus. That is not the fastest way to go around a track. And just Google or go on YouTube and look up Jack Miller goon riding, because that's what you look like when you're trying to drag knee.
Yeah. It's something, but it's not. Body position something, but it's not everything. I
Yeah.
always talk about like when when Josh Hayes and Josh Heron were both on the Yamaha factory team. This has got at least 10 years ago, and Josh Hayes is a very kind of conservative body position, and Josh Heron is very much more extreme, knee and elbow kind of close to the deck. But on the same bike, Josh Hayes was the faster rider. So I mean, it's something. It's not everything, but it's certainly the wrong thing to focus on if that's the goal for sure. So, but yeah, in terms of the things getting at the track, I don't know about you guys. I've actually seen 4 fatalities at the track. I mean, those are tough days, man. And people, I've known like really, that I've known really close. People I've seen around, customers and things like that. But those are tough days, man, and it can happen. I've seen people get really screwed up at the track too, where like a year or two in rehab, getting learning how to walk again or things like that. So yeah, these things happen, and that's the reality of the sport. Um, and sometimes it can be, sometimes it's your error. Sometimes it could be you could be the innocent victim. I've known people who've been in that situation also, but not a whole lot you could do about that. I mean, we just try to maintain a safe environment at the track. You can't ride the bike for them, though. That's the tough part about coaching and working with people is like sometimes you see people and it's like trouble is written all over the riding, and
Mm,
just try to talk them back from the ledge and like, hey man, just dial it down a little bit. I mean, just focus on this, that, or everything. And sometimes people listen, sometimes they don't. What else can you do short of taking the keys out of their hand? So.
mhm.
Yeah, it's a dangerous sport already, and we all have to sort of do our part, right, in mitigating the risk for ourselves and for everybody else on the track. And that means being in the right headspace. If it's a track day, listening to the coach's advice because that's what they're there for. Wearing the right gear. Making sure that your bike is properly set up, and a whole laundry list of other things. But it just spinning back around, to the crashes and everything, we've all been there. If you're listening and you ride a motorcycle, you're going to be there too. It's just a matter of time. Um, but it doesn't have to end your riding career. Like I said, we've all been there and we've come back forward and come back from it. And, it can be the same thing for anybody that's listening. It's just, just take some of the tips that we're talking about for sure. And, just take the time that you need, make it as safe as you possibly can. And when you're ready to come back, just get back on that horse, get back at it.
Yeah, I think like Tristan said, if you understand what happened, and those are the easier quote crashes to deal with, because then you can say, well, let's try not to do that again. The ones that you don't understand what happened, that's again my crash during the race. To this day, I still don't understand what the what happened. That was a tough one to deal with, but it's going to happen. Yeah, and having a short term memory and turning the page and getting back into the right mindset when you can is invaluable.
And it's a lot of it comes down to, do you want to enjoy this hobby for a long time, or do you want your motorcycling adventure to be pretty short-lived? Um, a guy I know who it scared the crap out of me. He bought an R1 for his first bike, and I was pretty convinced he was going to end up in the morgue. And 7 months later, he sold the bike suddenly, and I was like, "What's going on, man? Why'd you sell the bike?" And he goes, "Oh, all the people I bought a bike with at the same time, and we all started riding together. They're all now partially paralyzed or dead. So I sold the bike." And it's like, man, that was 7 months. I've been riding for 17 years, and of course, I've lost friends and stuff, but nothing like the number he has in 7 months. So it's like, do you want this to be a part of your life? Do you really love this hobby, or is this, I don't know what it is. Is this just something else you're doing that, this isn't something you just casually start doing, I don't think, because the risks are realistically so high compared to so many other hobbies. It's not playing golf.
I still think it's safer than riding on the streets. I mean, it is if you enjoy motorcycling, and there's certainly people who love like kind of adventure touring. They like being on the bike, having the wind, blowing by and seeing the scenery. But man, people, drivers, they aren't looking, man. That is, and it's unfortunate. I've not ridden on the street for anything more than running down to the gas station, and even then's been very minimal. I haven't probably taken a ride on the street over 20 miles in probably 10 years, just because people are not watching where they're going. So, um, if you enjoy motorcycling, certainly think the track is a safer environment. But these things happen on the road, as well as the track. So it's, again, getting back to how much if you enjoy motorcycling, I would certainly say the track is a better environment to enjoy that. Uh, if you ride on the street, good luck. So, it's I know Tristan, I know you still ride on the street, and I'm not saying stop it immediately, but for me, that the hazards. I think when we lived in Atlanta, that sealed the deal for me, where I used to actually ride into work, and there was more than once where I was lucky to make it in or home from work, just because people were almost riding me into a shoulder, or a guardrail or whatever, not watching where they're going. I said, this is crazy. I can't deal with this anymore.
Yeah, too many close
And just
calls, too many unknowns. I don't ride the street
yeah,
either. I gave it up several years ago at this point too.
and just to clarify, the guy with the R1, that was all street riding, him and the people he was out rolling with. But yeah, I have decided that, other than a shakedown ride or whatever, once I've put the monster back together, I'm gonna be selling it, and I'm gonna do my best to call it quits on street riding. But I have this nasty habit of getting twitchy in between track days, and needing to throw my leg over something. So I'm gonna
Dirt
try
bike.
to to mitigate that, and no, I'm not getting a dirt bike. And I'm actually gonna try to pick up some 600, and may go racing with John. So
636.
to whatever's cheap and nasty and already built.
Okay, so 636.
Maybe I'll sell you my R6. So it's
That'd be a good one.
But yeah,
already
I
seasoned.
think
So
I think I'm ready to, as it is, I only ride Sunday mornings or holidays. But I'm still capable of making bad decisions, like I did Christmas Day, and there was no traffic, and I chucked the thing down the road. So I don't want to do that. The conditions aren't the same. You can't maintain tire temperature. There's deer, there's dirt, there's all sorts. So yeah, I think I'm ready to walk away from the street as well.
Yeah, I mean,
So
you just can't beat the safety of the track. You got an ambulance right there, EMTs right there. I mean, wearing all the equipment, and there's just I think there's just that higher level of skill, like in general, as far as the people that you're surrounded with on track too. So definitely a good choice, I think, for sure. It's certainly 10 times safer than the street, I'd say. So heck yeah, man.
So, but I think to summarize overall, bouncing back from a crash is follow whatever process feels natural to you. Don't try to force things if that doesn't feel right. Don't take unnecessary risks. If your style is to get right back on it and go, that's great. If your style is to take a couple weeks and process it, or if you decide this isn't for you, that's also totally fine. And don't let anyone try to push you otherwise.
It's a good point to cut that off.
Yeah, that's right.
Snip that one right there
That's
too.
a good outro right there. So
Yeah. Just fade.